This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The UN Security Council sets date to discuss the escalating tension between Israel and Palestine. The South African Medical Research Council finds excess deaths that could be linked to COVID-19. And motorcycle enthusiasts in Benghazi seek to change negative perceptions about Libya. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and here with your business headlines is Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Sudan has secured a bridging loan to help it clear arrears with the African Development Bank. And South Africa's mining output leaps by over 21% year on year in the month of March. We'll have the details on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
Thanks for that, Rama. We'll see you in a bit. Well, Israel's military assault on the Gaza Strip is intensifying. Israel Defense Forces say they've struck a number of Hamas rocket sites and observation posts. The military says it launched an attack overnight involving 160 aircraft, tanks, artillery, and infantry units along the Gaza border, striking over 150 targets. Gaza's health ministry says at least 119 people have been killed, including 31 children. Israeli officials say rockets continue to be fired from Gaza. They report that 7 people have been killed in Israel since fighting began on Monday. Reporting from Gaza, here is Nur Harasin.
The people of Gaza lived a very terrifying night. Continuous bombing, air raids, Israeli air raids on the Gaza Strip. Also, the Israeli tanks around the borderline between Gaza and Israel started shelling the Palestinian homes all around the border from the east, the north, and the south, forcing hundreds of Palestinian families to flee their homes because they also fear a ground invasion. These families are now residing in UNRWA schools or at their relatives in central Gaza City. To be truthful, the people are very scared that they are being dragged to a new war with Israel. Yesterday was one of the most hard nights on the people of Gaza. Many casualties arrived to the hospitals in these bombings overnight on Gaza. Many of them are children and women. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, in the past 4 days, 120 people were killed. Among them are 31 children and more than 15 women. And also around 600 injuries were reported.
The UN Security Council is to meet on Sunday to discuss the escalating crisis between Israel and Palestine. The meeting was scheduled for Friday, but was blocked by the United States. China has criticized the U.S. move.
The U.S. has ignored the suffering of the Palestinian people and even risked condemnation to make strong obstructions.
The U.S. has also blocked the release of a joint statement over the issue. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says postponing the meeting will create more time for diplomatic efforts. China has vowed to push for UN actions to de-escalate tensions. It holds the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council this month. 2 UN sessions have already been held on the conflict this week. Well, India has begun its rollout of Russia's Sputnik V coronavirus vaccine in the city of Hyderabad. It's the first foreign-made COVID-19 vaccine being used in India. This comes as the country's caseload hit over the 24 million mark with more than 343,000 new infections. India has now seen 3 straight days of over 4,000 new deaths. A second round of inoculations is underway in the capital, New Delhi, amid a lockdown that's set to last until Monday. Well, as we mentioned earlier, India's COVID-19 tally has passed the 24 million mark with over 343,000 new cases registered. The country has reported a 3rd straight day of 4,000 deaths or more. The capital, New Delhi, is to remain under lockdown until Monday as it begins its second round of inoculations. Abdullah Hashmi reports.
Delhi's Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal says the Indian capital plans to vaccinate its entire population of 30 million against COVID-19 free of charge at more than 380 centers in the next 3 months. But this comes as the country's two largest vaccine manufacturers, Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute of India, struggle to meet the growing demands, with many providers running out of stock.
There is no such center in my area from where I can get vaccinated. People are so much off to it that they want to get vaccinated, but slots are not available.
Besides the issue of booking vaccination slots, many people also have to bear the weight of soaring vaccine prices. The cost of Serum Institute's Covishield has more than tripled since January, from 250 rupees per dose, a little over $3 to up to 900 rupees or around $12 per dose.
The charges for one dose, which is 900 rupees, that seems to be on a higher side, because just few days back, I think maybe in the month of April, same BL Kapoor hospital was charging 250 rupees, right, for one dose. So it doesn't look justified. How come that 250 rupees for same Covishield one dose has been increased to 900 rupees per dose? That is, of course, not at all justified.
Despite the price hikes, health workers and officials are still urging members of the public to get vaccinated as soon as they can.
If people will get vaccinated as much as possible in a single day, it will be helpful for each of us, for frontline workers, for people and general population of India. Okay. So I urge people that get vaccinated as soon as possible. There are so many myths regarding vaccination. Don't trust them, don't listen to anyone. As your doctor advises you, just follow them, go and take the vaccine. It will be helpful for you only.
The Delhi government has asked for a boost in supply of vaccines from the local manufacturers, and it's saying they're doing everything which they can to procure the vaccines. Meanwhile, they've also approached Reddy Labs to procure the Russian vaccine Sputnik V-Jab. Despite shortage of vaccines, vaccinations in Delhi continue for 18 and above. Abdullah Hashmi, CGTN, Delhi.
The South African Medical Research Council has been monitoring excess deaths since May 2020. In its latest report, the council says South Africa had recorded a 157,000 excess deaths in the past 12 months and estimated that 85% of them could have been caused by COVID-19. This could mean that just over 133,000 people had died from the disease. Angela Coppola has more.
The difference between what is being reported on a daily basis by the Department of Health and the number of excess deaths reported by the SA Medical Research Council is seen as an administrative issue and not a cause for concern.
We think that the reported deaths are so much lower because the reported deaths are only picking up the deaths that occur in the hospitals. The deaths that occur in long-term care institutions or in the community are not getting picked up in the official reported COVID deaths.
While the data is solid in terms of a rapid surveillance and monitoring of the big picture, the authorities say there is a challenge in properly identifying the cause of death.
They don't have the detail about the cause of death. That's on the death notification that the doctor completes, and it's on a piece of paper that eventually goes through to Pretoria, to Stats SA, where it gets processed. And they're still working on the 2018 cause of death data. So because it's paper-based and manual, and because of the impact of COVID itself, that officers have had to restrict access and slow down activities, we've not been able to drill down and have a look at what are those causes of death.
The Council's data shows that the virus has had a very clear impact on people over the age of 60.
It's very much in the 60 plus. The death rate increases in sort of age 40 to 59, it's a bit higher than usual, but over the age of 60, it's a lot higher than usual.
The difference between the two sets of data is not a uniquely South African problem. It's experienced across the world. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Tunisian government plans to ease some COVID-19 restrictions from mid-May to early June. Authorities say the new measures will pave the way for a return to normal life. Adnan Shuashi has the details.
The Tunisian government spokesperson announced that learning at schools and universities will resume next week. In addition, dormitories, places of worship and malls will also reopen on Sunday. Moreover, the maximum capacity of receiving clients at coffee shops and restaurants is limited to 30% in closed areas and 50% in open-air spaces.
We're easing COVID-19 restrictions, but lockdown measures will remain in place until Sunday, May 16th. There's only one exception. The intercity travel ban has been lifted as of Friday at 5 to avoid traffic congestion. The government will ensure compliance with COVID-19 preventative measures.
The head of the National Observatory for New and Emerging Diseases noted that easing restrictions does not mean that the health situation is improving in Tunisia.
We have no choice but to comply with safety measures. The sudden rise in infections and deaths is due to the failure to respect the general lockdown measures. The health situation is still very dangerous, and it's getting worse.
Many Tunisians were disappointed by the cancellation of Eid al-Fitr and the end of Ramadan festivities this week. Activists are urging the health department to accelerate the sluggish vaccination campaign in order to resume a normal life.
All elderly people, especially those living with chronic illnesses, need to be inoculated to boost their immunity. The whole population must get vaccinated against COVID-19.
People need to comply with the new measures. The restrictions are necessary. We must focus on sensitizing the population to limit infections and victims.
The general lockdown measures imposed from May 9th to 16th have had negative repercussions on many economic activities. People are hoping that the easing of restrictions will help limit the social and economic impact of the crisis. According to the National Institute of Statistics and the Tunisian Confederation of Trade, Industry and Handicrafts, more than 50% of Tunisian companies are facing financial difficulties. In addition, some firms are no longer able to meet their financial commitments due to the COVID-19 crisis. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
In Uganda, concern is growing as stocks of medicines used to manage COVID-19 complications and vaccines dry up. A temporary halt on drug exports by India is putting a strain on healthcare systems in Africa. Isabel Nakira reports.
David Ekau has sold out all his stocks of the remdesivir drug. It's used in managing the advanced complications of COVID-19. His pharmacy has been depending on supplies from India.
It's a product which is at about $60, but even at 10 times that price, they're not allowed to export it. Yeah. So right now, if you're a patient in Uganda and there's need for that product, it will be very difficult for you to access it.
Uganda is in its second wave of infections and COVID-19 cases are on the rise. The vaccination rollout has also been affected. Just over 400,000 people in Uganda have received their first dose of vaccines, and many of these were due for their second vaccination. People who turned up to receive their second jabs were asked to return in June. The country received 964,000 doses from the UN-backed COVAX initiative and the Indian government in March. Health officials say they are aiming to give as many first doses as possible to give a level of immunity to a larger number of people. But with vaccines running out, the health ministry is worried many may miss out.
The vaccines are going to be in a short supply for a long time, and we don't need to, we need to maintain the use and compliance to the SOPs.
The health ministry says more than 2 million doses of vaccines may arrive in June, but it's not clear where the vaccines will be coming from. The WHO has approved the Chinese Sinopharm vaccine for emergency use, and this could be an option for some African countries.
One is mobilizing doses from countries which are failing to absorb the vaccines as quickly as possible. That's one mechanism. Number two, there is also another mechanism where the production capacity of that factory is being expanded.
Authorities are urging people to observe safe distance measures and wash hands in order to contain the virus. Uganda has also maintained restrictions on night curfews and the closure of pubs and nightclubs. But with infections climbing, pharmacists like David warn the government that it needs to pay urgent attention to acquiring supplies from other drug exporters rather than relying heavily on India. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
It's time now for us to take a short break and return. More news, including heavy rains caused death, displacements, and destruction of property in Kenya. And China planning to land a rover on Mars in the coming few days.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Let's head over to West Africa, where Nigeria plans to prosecute 400 people accused of sponsoring the terror group Boko Haram. The government says the suspects are already being profiled. With the details, here's Tesem Makende reporting from Jos.
Nigeria's Minister of Justice and Attorney General Abubakar Malami didn't specify when the trials would start, but said the cases would go through special courts for terrorism. He added that the investigation into these 400 suspects was prompted by the convictions of 8 Nigerian nationals in the United Arab Emirates last year on terror financing charges. A federal appeals court in the UAE sentenced 6 Nigerians to 10-year prison terms and life in prison for 2 others. It found the accused guilty of transferring $782,000 to fund Boko Haram between 2015 and 2016. Boko Haram is a terrorist organization operating in Nigeria and the Lake Chad Basin. Its members have killed thousands and displaced millions, especially women and children, since 2009. The Nigerian government says it will not spare anyone found guilty of financing terror in the country. Tesem Akende, CGTN, Jos, Nigeria.
In the DRC, a clash between rival Muslim groups has left 1 police officer dead. The fight broke out in the capital of Kinshasa. Around 40 people were injured and 35 arrested in connection with the fight. Authorities say a disagreement broke out over who could use the Martyrs Sports Stadium to mark the end of Ramadan. The 2 rival factions had for years disputed the leadership of the Comico Muslim Federation. Prior to the fight, leaders had promised Kinshasa's governor that they would celebrate the end of Ramadan together.
Unfortunately, there were extremists on both sides who did not want to reconcile and to pray together. They threw projectiles, they violently attacked the police. We mourn the death of a police officer today.
DRC President Felix Tshisekedi has just concluded a visit to Ethiopia. Tshisekedi was visiting the country in his capacity as the AU chairperson. He met with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to discuss the Grand Renaissance Dam. Tshisekedi is seeking to help Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt reach an amicable agreement. The DRC president had visited both Egypt and Sudan previously to discuss the issue. Speaking to Tshisekedi, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed expressed his desire to find an African solution to the problem. A comprehensive agreement on the dam has yet to be reached. Over in Zimbabwe, former First Lady Grace Mugabe has been summoned by a traditional court to face charges of inappropriately burying her late husband, the country's long-term president, Robert Mugabe. The chief of Zimba village, which has the homestead where Mugabe was buried, wants Grace Mugabe to exhume the former leader's body for reburial at a family gravesite. Farai Makotuya has that story.
The late Robert Mugabe, who died in September 2019, was buried at his rural home in Zimba after his family turned down a burial at the National Heroes Shrine in Harare. The traditional chief of the area says the burial in Mugabe's homestead and not a village graveyard violated cultural practices of the area. In his summons, Chief Zimba says he would want the former president exhumed and reburied in the proper place and proper manner. That has split opinion here.
It's culturally bad to exhume a dead body. Where someone has been buried is where they should remain.
It's a good thing if he can be reburied because he is an icon and founding father. It's regrettable he was not buried at the National Heroes Shrine in the first place. So I will be happy if that can happen now.
If indeed the burial was done the wrong way and he needs to be exhumed and buried at a particular place and not his home, then I support that.
A traditional expert says a reburial would be a long and complex process and is unlikely.
These things have not started now, that people have wronged or people have been buried in places where they shouldn't be, or maybe they've been buried the wrong way, or maybe we've buried a child where we're not supposed to bury a child. The chiefs simply come in, they don't ask for you to exhume, but they actually come in and tell you that we need 2 goats. But for them to come up now, maybe it's 2 or 3 years or whatever, so many years after the president has been buried, and started to say that he's been buried improperly, I do not think that is proper.
At the time of his death, Mugabe's family had indicated that it was his wish to be buried at his rural home. Farai Makotuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Chinese President Xi Jinping is calling for more effective and economical use of water resources. He made the remarks at a symposium on China's mega water diversion project. The project aims to take water from the country's longest river, the Yangtze, through eastern, middle, and western routes to feed arid areas in the north. President Xi is on an inspection tour in the central Henan province, which is home to key water resources in China. He says the water diversion project matters to the country's growth and people's welfare. According to him, the project should be closely monitored for high-quality development. He also urged conservation of water resources. President Xi added that the project should minimize the need for resettlement and ensure the ecosystem is well preserved. He's also called for a speed up in building a more secure water supply and disaster prevention system. On the second day of President Xi's visit, he went to Sichuan County, where the middle route of the south to north water diversion project started. Xie Rushu tells us more.
This is Taocha Canal Head, the starting point of the middle route of south to north water diversion project in Sichuan County, central China's Henan province. On the second day of President Xi Jinping's visit to Nanyang, he came here to check how the project is working. He listened to the introductions to the construction, management, and operation of the middle route of the water diversion project and the ecological conservation of the water source region. China's water diversion project was designed to draw water from the Yangtze River and supply it to the dry north. The middle route begins at the Danjiangkou Reservoir between Hubei and Henan provinces, and the water runs across Henan and Hebei provinces through a man-made channel before reaching Tianjin and Beijing. It began supplying water on December 12, 2014. In the past 6.5 years, the middle route of water diversion project has diverted more than 40 billion cubic meters of water to the parched north. Over 130 million people have directly benefited, and in Beijing, over 75% of Beijing's tap water supply comes from the project. To make sure the water source keeps clean, efforts have been made to control the pollution. Now, the water quality in the Danjiangkou Reservoir can maintain at least a Grade 2 national standard for the surface water quality, while 95% of it reaches Grade 1, China's highest standard. On Thursday afternoon, President Xi traveled by boat to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the reservoir. On many occasions, President Xi has emphasized the importance of the project and water conservation. He said the south-to-north water diversion project will benefit not only one generation, but many more to come. The south-to-north water diversion project is important strategic infrastructure to optimize water resources, boost sustainable economic and social development, and improve people's livelihoods. Efforts must be made to coordinate the implementation of the south-to-north water diversion project and water-saving efforts in northern China. This is Zhouzhang village. After President Xi inspected the reservoir and water diversion project, he paid a visit here and talked to the local villagers. He learned about the resettlement of people relocated because of the water diversion project and measures to develop specialty industries and boost the incomes of the resettled residents. He said that all who is drinking the water from the project should show their gratitude and respect towards the migrants for their selfless sacrifice. He encouraged them to work harder to build a better place in their new homes. Today, the water diversion project has served as a lifeline of water supply for the north. The extension of the middle and eastern routes is promoted to allow the project to benefit more regions. 夏日雪 CGTN 南洋河南 Province.
China's first ever mission to Mars is set to land a rover on the red planet within the next few days. Tianwen-1 has been in Mars's orbit since February. China's Space Administration says the rover Zhurong will attempt a touchdown on the red planet's surface between Saturday and Wednesday. The landing site, Utopia Planitia, is the same area where NASA's Viking 2 lander touched down in 1976. The Tianwen-1 mission was launched in July last year atop a Long March 5 rocket. Let's have a look at how the country got there.
中国的东西能去，能飞得更远，中国人在宇宙当中的脚步能迈得越远越好。
China's most powerful heavy lift carrier rocket, the Long March 5, carrying China's Mars probe and now being rolled on a mobile platform to the launch pad.
这是我国第一次行星探测任务，即将开启中国的行星探测时代。加油！准备打开机电会议门杆。5、4、3、2。 1，点火。
器件分离。这是个中国火箭飞得最快的一次，而且是中国火箭要飞得最远的一次。
在举国欢度国庆中秋之际，天问1号探测器发回了升空自拍，图上的5星红旗呈现出了鲜艳的中国红，以此向祖国报告平安，送上生日祝福。
天问1号火星探测器升空机动控制正常结束。
火星迎来了第一个中国的卫星，这是一个很大的步伐。这是我们国家有了第一个行星际的探测器，绕着火星转了。
天
Well, the Chinese government has donated COVID-19 vaccines to the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. The Chinese ambassador to Ethiopia, Zhang Zhuyang, handed the donation to the Ethiopian Minister of Defense, China-Ethiopia. During the event, both sides hailed the strong ties between the two countries in defense and security sector cooperation. CGTN's Guram Chala has the details.
At the soon-to-be commissioned headquarters of the Ethiopian National Defense Force, the Chinese government's donation of vaccines was received by Defense Minister China-Ethiopia. Chinese ambassador to Ethiopia, Zhao Zhiyuan, who spoke after the handing over event, said this latest donation is a gesture of the true friendship between the two nations.
This is a good example of the profound traditional friendship between the two countries and our military's sisterly close cooperation. As the saying goes, every minute counts when life is at stake. The China PLA-aided vaccines will surely help protect the life and health of many Ethiopian defense officers and soldiers.
Ethiopia's defense minister said the country appreciated China's vaccination donation that had been sent by the People's Liberation Army of China, PLA.
I really thank you on behalf of Minister of Defense for all the support you have given us. We are one of the countries of the ancient civilization. Particularly the relationship, the diplomatic relationship between China and Ethiopia is really developing, is progressing from time to time.
Ethiopia and China have also pledged to continue strengthening ties for future development. China is currently assisting Ethiopia to build a state-of-the-art military hospital located some 30 kilometers outside of the capital, Addis Ababa.
Your experience is really to much help because currently we have developed a homegrown economic policy. So your experience in economic aspect also help us to develop our country. So I'm grateful for your support in all aspects.
Ethiopian and Chinese militaries are working closely in many other cooperation areas. As a close friend, reliable partner, and good brother of Ethiopia, Chinese PLA will stand firmly with Ethiopian Defense Forces to fight against pandemic together in this difficult time.
Before this, China had also sent 300,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines to Ethiopia. The Eastern Africa country is now using that vaccination donation to protect its population from the pandemic. Over the past 50 years, Ethiopia and China have forged a strong and close relationship, which pretty much is exemplary for the rest of Africa. The relationship that started in the 1970s has eventually transformed to a comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership in 2017. Now China and Ethiopia have an ever stronger ties in all areas, more particularly economy, people to people, and of course military. Group Jala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, I'll be standing by to bring you more news, including the latest in sport. But for your business headlines, here is Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business. Sudan secures a bridging loan to help it clear arrears with the African Development Bank. And South Africa's mining output jumps by over 21% year-on-year in the month of March.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's start in Sudan. Authorities over there have cleared arrears due to the African Development Bank through a $413 million bridge loan provided by 3 countries, the UK, Sweden and Ireland. Now, that move now makes the country eligible for fresh credit lines from the Cote d'Ivoire-based lender, including an immediate grant of $207 million. Back in March, Sudan also cleared arrears due to the International Development Association, enabling its full re-engagement with the World Bank after nearly 3 decades. That paved the way for the country to get access to nearly $2 billion in grants for poverty reduction and economic recovery programs. Over in West Africa, Nigeria's headline inflation rates hit the highest levels in more than 4 years in March at 18.17%. Analysts expect a future uptick in April on the back of prolonged insecurity and weak availability of foreign currency. Analysts polled by the local Business Day publication said that consumer prices are expected to rise to 18.76% year on year as the cost of living continues to rise in Africa's most populous nation. Food inflation has accelerated at the highest pace in 15 years amidst a worsening conflict between farmers and herders in Nigeria's agricultural belt that the government so far has struggled to end. The situation has also been exacerbated by import restrictions placed by the country's central bank in the name of conserving its forex reserves. On to South Africa. The country's mining output rose by 21.3% year on year in March, posting the biggest rise in 6 years. Mineral sales for the month went up to a record $5.3 billion. 41% of that was generated by platinum group metals. The March data was the first positive set since February 2020 after the February 2021 number was revised into negative territory. Last March mining output declined by 14.9% year on year as mines cut production and sent workers home ahead of the start of a hard lockdown later that month. Now, the base effect notwithstanding, the latest data is being seen in a positive light. This was the biggest annual increase since March 2015, when an annual increase of 21.8% was recorded. On to North Africa. The International Monetary Fund is set to complete Egypt's second and final review of its year-long $5.2 billion loan program at the end of June. A positive review will unlock the final tranche of the facility worth about $1.6 billion. Egypt received an initial disbursement of about $2 billion last June and an additional $1.6 billion late last year. With the details, here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim.
The $5.2 billion loan is meant to fund the government's emergency financial packages and counter the prolonging effects of the coronavirus pandemic.
Like any economy worldwide, Egypt's been affected by the fallout of the coronavirus pandemic. The hardest hit sectors were tourism and aviation. The Suez Canal succeeded in maintaining the pre-COVID profit margins, but tourism is the major source of hard currency for the state. The halt in flights and tourist inflows strongly reduced the state's revenue. This loan helps cover the deficit and ensures funding continues for important social welfare programs, healthcare sector and development projects.
In its previous review, end of 2020, the IMF had raised its expectations of Egypt's economic growth from 2% to 2.8%. It has also praised the economy as flexible and able to resist external shocks. The current review is underway till June.
The World Bank doesn't provide any loans unless there's a study of the economic situation. Credit history shows Egypt has succeeded in repaying its loans and interests on time in spite of the coronavirus crisis. There are also positive outlooks from international ratings agencies towards the economy. Egypt's achieved its lowest inflation rates in 20 years, a drop in interest rates, and a drop in unemployment rates and a rise in growth rates in spite of the coronavirus. These numbers show the economy is strong enough to fulfill its debt payments.
Egypt has been one of a handful of countries that avoided economic contraction amid the pandemic year 2020. And experts say a positive IMF report would support the economy going forward. The release of the final tranche of the IMF loan is not just about receiving money,
but it's a sign of approval for foreign investments to return to the North African country. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The International Monetary Fund wants Zambia to implement policy reforms already agreed to before resuming talks on a long-awaited economic program that has held up debt restructuring talks with external creditors. Now, this latest delay has dealt a blow to bondholders' hopes for an agreement before general elections are held later in August. Last October, Zambia became the continent's first pandemic-era sovereign defaulter when it did not pay $42.5 million due to its creditors. It did not pay another $51.6 million due to holders of its 2027 Eurobond in January. An IMF program is absolutely crucial for Zambia if it is to reach a restructuring agreement with the holders of as much as $12.7 billion of its external public debt. Analysts say that the government will probably only be willing to implement reforms after the elections are held, and talks of a deal might drag on until the end of the year. Onto the Horn of Africa. Ethiopia's sole mobile service provider, Ethio Telecom, has launched a mobile phone-based financial service earlier this week. Now, mobile financial services are becoming an increasingly larger part of African telecom operators' businesses after Kenya's Safaricom pioneered them with the rollout of M-Pesa back in 2007, giving people an alternative savings, payment and transaction channel compared to banks and plain old cash. State-owned Ethio Telecom says it will allow users to send and receive money, deposit or take out cash at appointed agents, pay bills to various merchants and receive cash sent from abroad. Now, the new service is called Telebir. It marks quite a shift for Ethiopia, where the banking system of 19 commercial banks serves a population of roughly 115 million people.
Using my mobile phone, I can do just about anything. I can pay my electricity bill, my water bill. I can receive and send money with it. This is just a huge deal for Ethiopia.
You know, with this new mobile money technology, we can significantly avoid going to banks and crowded places. That also helps to protect ourselves from the current COVID-19 pandemic. Apart from that, this new system saves time. Generally, this mobile money technology is key.
The benefit of this new Ethio Telecom system is multi-faced. You know, first of all, the coming out, the long-serving Ethio Telecom with new technology is something great. So instead of carrying a lot of cash now, one can use Telebir. The benefits are many. Therefore, if people use it, they can profit a lot and lose nothing.
Away from the continent, a major U.S. fuel pipeline has reportedly, or rather the company running that pipeline, has reportedly paid a cyber criminal gang, DarkSide, nearly $5 million in ransom following a devastating cyber attack. Colonial Pipeline suffered a ransomware attack over the weekend that took its service down for 5 days, and that caused supplies to tighten across the United States. Bloomberg was first to report this particular story. It said that the ransom was paid, citing sources it did not disclose. Colonial said on Thursday that it would not comment on the issue. Neither did the U.S. President Joe Biden. On Friday, the Japanese consumer tech giant Toshiba said its European division in France had also been hit by the exact same cyber criminal gang. In the wake of that attack, Colonial announced it would resume operations on Wednesday evening, but it did warn that it could take several days for supply levels to return to normal. The 8,900-kilometer-long pipeline normally carries roughly 2.5 million barrels equivalent of gasoline and diesel and jet fuel a day on the East Coast. I'll leave you there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. In global business, we'll be looking at Tanzania. Its gold exports have hit a new level, $3 billion a year. That's the first time in the country's history that it's hit that. We'll have the details on that story and lots more at the top of the hour. See you at 1800 GMT. For now, back to Hannah.
Thanks, Rama. We're looking forward to that. We'll see you in a bit. We'll also now take a short break and return. Here's what's coming up. Motorcycle enthusiasts in Benghazi seek to change negative perceptions about Libya.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's go to Kenya now, where at least 5 people have been killed by floods and hundreds more displaced following heavy rainfall on Thursday night. Several parts of Kenya have received heavy rains in recent weeks, prompting the Meteorology Department to issue a flood warning across the country. CGTN's Robin Nagila reports.
Using stakes, local authorities and residents of Kibra, the largest slum dwelling in Nairobi, searched for the bodies of 4 people swept away by raging floods on Thursday night. By early Friday morning, authorities had recovered 1 body. The victims are said to have been trying to cross a river on motorbikes following heavy rainfall when they were swept away.
It swept away 5 people. 1 body has been found, but 4 others are still missing.
It rained heavily last night. I lost one of my friends who was swept away by the water. We have been searching all morning for his body.
By mid-morning, as the water levels receded, residents began cleaning up their homes and businesses. In a statement, the Met Department said more than 30 millimeters of rainfall had been recorded in Nairobi and several parts of the country over a 24-hour period. The floods wreaked havoc across the city, bringing down power lines and causing damage estimated to be in the tens of millions of shillings to both private and public property. The Meteorological Department had issued a flood warning earlier this week, warning of mudslides and landslides. In parts of the country, hundreds have been displaced from their homes. Authorities have urged those in low-lying areas to move to higher ground. The heavy rains witnessed for much of the past week across the country are expected to reduce in intensity over the weekend. Back in Kibra, they're counting their losses.
My neighbor who employed me died in the floods, so now I am jobless.
But they're not out of danger yet. With more rains expected, many here will be hoping it passes without incident. Robert Nakela, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
To Libya now, where motorcycle riding is gaining a large following. Bikers in the city of Benghazi say they are trying to change the country's image of a war-scarred one into a place of fun and peace through biking. Let's take a look.
Libya's city of Benghazi is a cradle of the country's 2011 revolution and was a one-time stronghold of extremists. Some of the city's residents are hoping that through biking, they can show another side of their once war-torn country.
A lot of people used to look at motorcyclists and see them as criminals. We have completely changed this image. We want to show Benghazi in a good way. We used to ride even in the days of the war. We've had French and British crews film us, and we've shown them that not all Libyans make war. They are not all criminals.
Emerging from the headquarters of the Benghazi Motorcycle Club, rumbling engines and dozens of leather-clad, heavy-duty motorbike enthusiasts tear up the city's tarmac in their regular parades. Club members say biking is not only a passion, it's also a way of portraying the city in a different light, a semblance of normality, despite Libya's pervasive division and violence.
In the city of Benghazi, there are those who fight and there are those who have a passion. During the war, we used to ride our bikes.
The bikers say that by showing off their passion, they've created a platform to educate more people about biking.
Before the 2011 revolution, people used to see whoever was driving a motorcycle as abnormal. But thank God, after the revolution, that image has changed, especially after more than one documentary was filmed showing how to properly identify bikers through their uniform and motorcycles. Now, families and children come to have their picture taken with us.
The Benghazi Motorcycle Club was established in 2014, 3 years after the fall of Libya's longtime leader, Muammar Gaddafi. It has about 120 members. Aside from educating people about biking in their parades, club members also raise funds for charities. Astatal, CGTN.
Some sport action coming after the break. Here's a highlight. Chelsea gear up to face Leicester.